According to Robert Kiyosaki, the renowned author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the art of making money is a science overlooked by traditional education. Schools primarily focus on preparing individuals for employment and establishing careers. If you come from a middle-class background, like myself, there's a high likelihood that your parents unknowingly imparted habits that lead to financial struggles. This isn't a lack of love or desire for your success on their part. Rather, it stems from their own lack of education on financial matters. Kiyosaki compares poverty to a hereditary trait, passed down through generations due to the transmission of outdated information. Personally, I wish I had encountered Rich Dad, Poor Dad during my early teenage years. I strongly encourage you to explore the book or watch this video, as I plan to provide a comprehensive summary of its 7 crucial lessons. Lesson number 1. The rich don't work for money. At the age of 9, Robert faced exclusion from a classmate's beach house alongside his childhood friend, Mike, due to their economic status. Seeking guidance, Robert turned to his father for advice on achieving wealth. However, his father, whom he refers to as his poor dad, simply suggested that making more money was the key. Even as a child, Robert grasped that this simplistic advice wouldn't lead him to true wealth. Recognizing Robert and Mike's eagerness to learn about financial success, Robert's poor dad suggested they seek counsel from Mike's father, whom Robert regarded as his rich dad. Robert and Mike were taken aback when they discovered that Rich Dad wasn't wealthy at the time, and he hadn't even completed 8th grade. Despite this, he managed multiple prosperous businesses. Despite the initial surprise, they met with Mike's dad, and on that day, he questioned their readiness to learn the art of making money. Eagerly nodding in agreement, they awaited his guidance. Instead of a conventional classroom approach, he proposed a unique offer: he would impart his money-making wisdom, only if they worked for him. According to him, passive listening, as in traditional schooling, wouldn't suffice. They could learn more effectively by actively working with him. Just as Robert contemplated asking a question, he swiftly conveyed that indecision would hinder their learning process. Stressing the importance of making swift decisions in recognizing opportunities, he prompted them to decide promptly. Realizing the significance of the moment, Robert and Mike exchanged glances and mutually agreed to seize the offer. Mike's father expressed satisfaction and offered to pay them 10 cents per hour for 3 hours of work every Saturday, even though Robert had a conflicting softball game on those days. Despite the game, Robert opted to prioritize work and learning over playing. Recognizing this as a valuable opportunity, he was determined not to let it slip away. Robert and Mike commenced their employment with Mrs. Martin, an employee of Mike's father, responsible for overseeing a small supermarket. This store catered to essential needs like milk, bread, butter, and cigarettes. The drawback was the absence of air conditioning, compelling them to keep the doors wide open to the road and parking lot, causing dust to settle whenever a car passed by. Their task involved removing canned goods from shelves, dusting them with a feather duster to eliminate dirt, and then neatly restacking them. The work was monotonously dull, spanning 3 hours each Saturday, and they earned a modest 30 cents. This was not particularly thrilling for them, given that a single comic book cost 10 cents in that era. Despite the lack of excitement, they persevered, driven by their desire to acquire knowledge about making money. However, after 3 weeks of such repetitive tasks, Robert contemplated quitting. Feeling like a mere laborer earning a meager 10 cents per hour and having not encountered Mike's dad since their initial meeting, Robert decided to quit during lunchtime in the 4th week. Tired of the tedious job that occupied his Saturdays, he expressed his decision to Mike, expecting disappointment. To his surprise, Mike smiled and revealed that his dad had anticipated this outcome, instructing Mike to approach him when Robert was ready to quit. Though Robert was frustrated, Mike explained that his father's teaching style differed from Robert's parents. Instead of lecturing, Mike's dad believed in imparting wisdom through experiences. Despite his initial anger, Robert agreed to meet with Mike's dad the following Saturday, even though his own father disapproved. Robert's poor dad had advised him to demand a raise, suggesting at least 25 cents per hour, and quit if the request was denied. Upon arriving at Mike's house, Robert endured a 45-minute wait before Mike's dad finally emerged. Annoyed and upset, Robert accused him of not fulfilling his promise to teach in exchange for work, labeling him as greedy and disrespectful to his employees. Mike's dad asked Robert if teaching meant talking or giving a lecture, and Robert replied with a nod. In response, Rich Dad argued that life itself serves as the ultimate teacher, emphasizing that, most of the time, life does not communicate with words. He conveyed that life often nudges us to impart valuable lessons. While some individuals allow life to push them around, others resist the wrong elements, such as their job, boss, or spouse. Only a select few view life's nudges as opportunities for learning and personal growth. Rich Dad disclosed that, despite having more than 150 employees, none had ever approached him to learn about money. Their focus was solely on securing jobs and paychecks, without truly comprehending the purpose behind their work. However, when Mike expressed their shared desire to learn the art of making money, Rich Dad decided to institute a program that mimicked real-life situations, initially compensating them with a modest 10 cents per hour. A move that initially stirred frustration, he clarified that he wanted them to undergo life's pushes to better grasp the essence of his teachings. When Rich Dad inquired about what Robert had gleaned from working for a meager wage, Robert vented his frustration about Rich Dad's apparent greed and lack of respect for his employees. He even threatened to quit unless Rich Dad raised his pay or provided more substantial teachings. Rich Dad clarified that many people would follow Robert's suggested course of action by quitting and seeking higher-paying employment. However, he emphasized that this approach typically fails to resolve underlying problems. Rich Dad wanted Robert to grasp that waiting for a raise, believing it would solve his issues, was not the ultimate solution. Instead, the key was to make money work for him. As Robert slowly absorbed this lesson, Rich Dad asked if he still had a passion for learning. Upon Robert's affirmative response, Rich Dad dropped a surprising decision: he would cease paying Robert for his work at the store. Confused as he had initially sought a raise, Robert found himself working for free. Rich Dad explained that if Robert aimed to increase his earnings, he needed to employ his intellect and find a solution. Consequently, Robert and Mike worked without pay for 3 weeks. One day, Mike's dad treated them to ice cream and asked if they had learned anything. Their response was negative. Rich Dad urged them to hasten their understanding of the lesson that lay before them. To illustrate, he prompted the boys to observe Mrs. Martin and the people in the park, encouraging them to ponder whether the life they were leading appeared exciting. He pointed out the toil for meager pay, the clinging to the illusion of job security, and the anticipation of a brief vacation each year, coupled with the hope for a pension after 45 years of service. Rich Dad proposed that if the prospect of this kind of life excited them, he would be willing to increase their pay by 25 cents an hour. Their hearts raced with anticipation, recognizing the significant impact it could have on them. Despite this, they declined. Observing their reluctance, Rich Dad elevated the offer to $1 an hour and then to $2. With each increment, Robert felt his heart pounding, and his mind urged him to accept the offer. The thought of earning $2 an hour, potentially making him the wealthiest kid in the world, fueled his imagination. He envisioned acquiring a new bicycle, a fresh baseball glove, and earning the admiration of his friends when he displayed some cash. However, for some reason, he refrained from saying yes. Rich Dad observed 2 boys gazing back at him, eyes wide open, but with minds seemingly blank. He recognized that he was testing them and acknowledged that every person harbors a vulnerable and needy part of their soul that can be swayed by material gain. Simultaneously, he knew that each individual also possesses a resilient part of their soul that cannot be easily influenced. The determining factor, he believed, was which part was stronger. Consequently, he extended a final offer of $5 an hour, prompting an immediate change in the boys' expressions. Their vacant looks transformed into a sense of calmness. In that moment, he sensed their temptation dissipate. The part of their soul that was weak and needy seemed subdued, overridden by the part that held no monetary value. Rich Dad expressed approval that they seemingly didn't have a price, contrasting it with the majority who are controlled by fear and greed. The fear of lacking money compels people to toil for a paycheck, but once they possess money, greed fuels desires for more possessions, creating a cycle that Rich Dad referred to as the rat race. In response to Mike's inquiry about an alternative, Rich Dad acknowledged its existence, but noted that few were aware of it. Mike sought a clue, and Rich Dad revealed that they would learn about it while working with him without pay. Curious, Mike pressed for more information, and Rich Dad responded that the first step involves telling the truth. When asked to clarify, Rich Dad specified that it pertained to their feelings and required personal confession rather than confiding in others. Rich Dad doubted whether the people working for him were capable of confessing their truth. Instead, he observed that they succumbed to the fear of lacking money, reacting emotionally rather than logically. Their failure to confront this fear allowed their emotions to control their actions. Despite working to earn money in the hope of alleviating their fear, it proved to be an elusive resolution. Money wields significant influence over their emotions and souls, yet many individuals are unwilling to acknowledge this reality. Rich Dad cautioned against falling into this trap, emphasizing that being wealthy doesn't resolve the underlying problem. To explain, he introduced another crucial emotion: desire. People commonly desire things that are perceived as better, more attractive, or more exciting. Many labor for money with the belief that it will bring happiness, but Rich Dad asserted that the happiness derived from money is fleeting. Contrary to expectations, some affluent individuals are driven by fear, thinking that money ensures security. However, they often find themselves anxious about the possibility of losing it all, experiencing greater stress than when they were less affluent. Rich Dad underscored the impact of emotions on decision-making, cautioning that fear can lead to choices that fail to address the core issue. For instance, the fear of financial insufficiency might lead someone to believe that securing a job is the only solution. But in reality, a job serves as a temporary remedy for a more enduring problem. The key, according to Rich Dad, is to cultivate independent thinking and prevent emotions from dictating actions. Rich Dad expressed optimism when both boys agreed to work for free, interpreting it as a step toward resisting their emotions. When tempted with more money, they demonstrated a capacity to think independently despite emotional influences. Rich Dad advised them to persist in their work, suggesting that the sooner they detached from the need for a paycheck, the smoother their adult lives would become. He encouraged them to continue engaging their minds, work without immediate monetary reward, and assured them that their minds would eventually unveil methods of earning money, surpassing what he could pay. By doing so, they would develop the ability to perceive opportunities that elude others, a skill that would benefit them throughout their lives. Following Rich Dad's guidance, the boys quickly identified an opportunity, establishing a library where kids could pay an admission fee to read unlimited comic books. They appointed Mike's younger sister as the head librarian, charging each child 10 cents for entry, a bargain. Considering a single comic book cost 10 cents, allowing the kids to read 6 in 2 hours. Over a 3-month span, Mike and Robert earned an average of $9.50 per week. They paid Mike's sister $1 weekly and permitted her to read the comics for free. Unfortunately, they had to shut down the library after 3 months due to a fight that occurred on the premises. Nevertheless, they had gained valuable insights into making money work for them, even in their absence. The initial lesson they learned was that the wealthy don't work solely for money. Eager to delve deeper into these principles, Mike's dad was prepared to continue imparting knowledge to them. Lesson 2. Why teach financial literacy? When asked about the starting point of his journey to wealth, Robert responds with the same advice he received from his rich dad. To become wealthy, one needs financial literacy. For instance, accounting, while often perceived as boring and confusing, is absolutely crucial for financial success. To simplify this knowledge, Rich Dad employed pictures and straightforward language to teach Robert and Mike. One of the initial concepts Rich Dad conveyed was the distinction between assets and liabilities. According to him, the key to wealth is simple focus on acquiring assets. Despite its simplicity, many people fail to grasp this idea. Initially, when Rich Dad introduced the concept to Robert and Mike, they found it so straightforward that they thought he was joking. They wondered why adults, and everyone else, didn't automatically become rich by understanding such a simple principle. The challenge lies in the diverse education provided by bankers, financial planners, and others. To truly understand and adopt the wealth-building perspective, individuals must unlearn their preconceived notions, especially the tendency to mistake liabilities for assets. Robert employs straightforward definitions, stating that assets are things that put money in your pocket, while liabilities are things that take money out of your pocket. This delineates the cash flow pattern of an asset. The upper section of the illustration represents an income statement, commonly known as a profit and loss statement. It assesses income and expenses, tracking money coming in and going out. The lower portion of the diagram serves as a balance sheet, named so because it aims to balance assets against liabilities. Assets contribute to your income by putting money in your pocket. For instance, if you own a house and rent it out, it qualifies as an asset since it generates monthly income. On the other hand, A liability follows a cash flow pattern that takes money out of your pocket. To attain wealth, the strategy involves steering clear of liabilities and instead acquiring more assets. These simplified diagrams offer a clear understanding of how individuals manage their finances. Robert often observes that individuals in debt often believe that the solution to their problems lies in making more money. However, he emphasizes that merely increasing income may not always resolve their issues and might even exacerbate them. This is evident in situations where people who come into sudden wealth, such as lottery winners or inheritance recipients, often find themselves quickly depleting their newfound funds. The influx of cash frequently leads to increased spending. According to Robert, the missing element for many people is financial education. While they may find success in their professions, they struggle with money management. Despite being intelligent, they may lack financial literacy, having learned how to earn money through hard work, but not how to make their money work for them. Robert challenges the conventional belief that a home is an asset, asserting that it is, in fact, a liability due to ongoing expenses like taxes. This doesn't mean one should avoid buying a house altogether, but rather, the recommendation is to first invest in assets that generate the necessary cash flow to cover home ownership expenses. Robert simplifies the path to wealth, asserting that to get rich, one should focus on acquiring more income-producing assets while keeping liabilities and expenses low. He defines wealth as a person's ability to sustain themselves for a certain number of days forward. Or, in other words, how long they could survive if they stopped working today. Another perspective on wealth, according to Robert, is the measure of cash flow from the asset column compared with the expense column. When your assets generate sufficient income to cover your expenses, you achieve wealth, even if you haven't reached the status of being rich yet. Lesson 3. Mind your own business. Mind your own business became a valuable lesson when a friend of Robert attended a talk by Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, in 1974 at the University of Texas. After the event, Ray joined students for beers and asked them about his business. Initially thinking it was hamburgers, the students were surprised when Ray revealed he considered himself in the real estate business. He understood that the location and land were critical to the success of each franchise. Today, McDonald's holds the title of the largest single owner of real estate globally, with prime locations at valuable intersections and street corners. Robert applies this lesson by asking people about their business, often hearing responses like, "I'm a banker." He then challenges them to consider if they own the bank, and most admit they work there. This distinction illustrates the difference between one's profession and their business. Many people work for others' employers, the government, or banks, neglecting the importance of minding their own business. Rich Dad and Ray Kroc knew the secret to success: mind your own business. Robert emphasizes that this doesn't necessarily mean starting a company. Instead, it involves focusing on your asset column, not just your income column. He encourages individuals to maintain their daytime jobs while strategically investing in real assets, avoiding liabilities that depreciate in value. Keeping expenses low, reducing liabilities, and building a foundation of solid assets are crucial. Robert stresses the importance of parents teaching these principles to young people before they leave home, helping them understand what constitutes a true asset and preventing them from falling into a life of debt. According to Robert, real assets fall into categories: businesses that don't require a constant presence, ones that he owns, but are managed and run by others. If he has to work there, it's not a business. It becomes his job. Number 2, stocks. Number 3, bonds. Number 4, income-generating real estate. 5, royalties from intellectual property such as music and patents. 6, anything else that has value, produces income, or appreciates, and has a ready market. Acquire assets that you love. Robert is passionate about real estate, dedicating a significant portion of his time to contemplating and exploring potential investments in the field. He emphasizes that if someone doesn't share a fondness for real estate, they should refrain from investing in it. Even during his tenure at Xerox, Robert focused on minding his own business. While maintaining his day job, he gradually developed his asset column. As his understanding of accounting and cash management improved, so did his ability to analyze investments, eventually leading to the establishment of his own company. Robert doesn't advocate for everyone to start a company unless they possess a genuine desire to do so. Instead, he advises individuals to stick with their day jobs and concentrate on building and fortifying their asset column. As cash flow increases, one can consider indulging in luxuries, but only if the generated cash flow supports such expenditures. The key is to build a robust asset column, allowing the income generated by those assets to fund any desired luxuries. Once assets generate ample income to cover such luxuries, that's the appropriate time to acquire them. Lesson 4. The history of taxes and the power of corporations. While many perceive Robin Hood as a hero taking from the rich and giving to the poor, Rich Dad held a different view, considering Robin Hood a crook. Despite the prevailing sentiment that the wealthy should pay more in taxes to support the less fortunate, Rich Dad did not agree. He argued that, in reality, the burden of heavy taxation falls on the middle class, particularly the educated upper income segment. To elucidate how this occurs, Robert provides a brief history of taxes in England and America. Originally, there were no taxes in both countries, only occasional temporary levies for specific needs like wars. In 1874, England made income tax a permanent levy on its citizens, and in 1913, America followed suit. Initially imposed solely on the rich, income taxes were later expanded to include the middle class and the poor. Rich Dad explained the contrasting perspectives he and his poor dad held, as the latter, a government employee, was rewarded for spending and expanding his organization, while for Rich Dad, minimizing expenses and personnel made him more respected by investors. As Robert delved into the history of taxes, he observed that the government's increasing need for funds led to levies on the middle class, trickling down further. However, the rich found ways to capitalize on their advantage, as they didn't adhere to the same rules. Corporations, which gained popularity during the age of sailing ships, provided a means to circumvent taxes. The legal corporate structure, essentially a legal document creating an entity rather than a tangible thing, offered a lower income tax rate than individuals. This advantageous structure allowed the wealthy to outsmart intellectuals and pay minimal taxes, as attempts to penalize the rich through taxation often proved ineffective. Lesson number 5. The rich invest money. Our mind stands as the most crucial asset, capable of generating millions through a simple idea or agreement, when properly trained. By enhancing your financial intelligence, you gain the ability to perceive opportunities that others may overlook, essentially creating wealth. In the early 1990s, during a challenging economic period in Arizona, USA, while most people feared an economic crash, Robert and his wife, Kim, capitalized on the situation and made a substantial profit. To illustrate, they acquired a $75,000 house for $20,000 with a down payment of $2,000. Lacking the funds, they borrowed $2,000 from a friend for a $200 fee. Simultaneously, Robert ran an ad advertising the same house for $60,000 with no down payment required from buyers. Once the house legally belonged to them, they sold it within minutes, creating $40,000 almost effortlessly. This example highlights how ideas can turn into significant financial gains, demonstrating the potential for hundreds of thousands of dollars. Robert emphasizes that markets fluctuate, investments evolve, and the world consistently presents opportunities of a lifetime. Developing financial intelligence allows you to identify these opportunities. The more you cultivate your financial IQ over time, the more opportunities will come your way. Amidst the changes in our world, an elevated financial IQ enables you to view the future with excitement rather than dread, recognizing and acting on opportunities instead of letting fear keep you on the sidelines. For instance, historical wealth was tied to land, followed by factories and production. Today, wealth lies in information, and as information circulates globally at the speed of light, this process is expected to become even more rapid and impactful with time. Lesson 6. Work to learn, don't work for money. A few years ago, Robert had an interview in Singapore with a journalist who expressed her desire to become a best-selling author like him. Despite receiving praise for her excellent novels, she struggled to sell them. Robert suggested she take a sales training course, but this offended the reporter, who held a master's in English literature and disliked salespeople. Robert pointed out that he was a best-selling author, not necessarily the best writing author. The journalist refused to consider learning sales, emphasizing her aversion to it, and left the interview. There are many talented individuals facing financial challenges, similar to the journalist. As one business consultant put it, they are often just one skill away from achieving greatness. In the realm of money, most people only know the skill of working hard. Robert recommended that the journalist take sales courses and work at an advertising agency to gain insights into sales, which she could then apply to sell more novels. When Robert released his first book, If you want to be rich and happy, don't go to school. A publisher suggested a less controversial title like The Economics of Education. However, Robert opted for the provocative title, knowing it would generate more media coverage, which indeed proved successful. Rich Dad encouraged Robert to acquire a broad range of knowledge, advising him to learn a little about many things. Robert and his friend Mike worked various jobs growing up to gain diverse experiences. While many people focus on securing jobs for short-term pay and benefits, Robert advocates for a long-term perspective. He suggests seeking work that teaches essential skills and recommends taking a second job to learn a second skill. Although resistance to change is common, Robert likens it to starting at the gym, an effort that may require persuasion, but yield satisfaction once the workout is over. Contrary to Poor Dad's preference for specialization, which didn't benefit him, Rich Dad encouraged Mike and Robert to diversify their skills and learn about various business areas. According to Robert, key skills for success include cash flow management, system management, and people management. He highlights specialized skills in sales and marketing as the most crucial, and he consistently invests in his education by attending courses and purchasing educational resources to expand his knowledge. Lesson 7. Overcoming obstacles. Financially literate individuals may still struggle to develop abundant cash flow due to 4 main reasons: fear, cynicism, laziness, and bad habits. Let's examine each of these factors. Fear. Nobody enjoys losing money, and fear of financial loss is universal. The primary difference between rich and poor individuals lies in how they handle this fear. Rich people don't let the fear of losing money take them out of the game. While most people play not to lose, successful investors play to win by taking calculated risks and creating winning portfolios. Cynicism. Whether it stems from self-doubt or external skepticism, cynicism can prevent action and lead to missed opportunities. Many individuals play it safe due to doubts, missing out on potential gains. Overcoming cynicism involves staying open to opportunities and avoiding the critical mindset that cynics often adopt. Winners analyze, while cynics criticize. Laziness can hinder success, and the antidote to laziness is a bit of greed. Viewing greed or desire positively, rather than negatively, can shift the mindset from "I can't afford it" to "how can I afford it?" This change in perspective opens the mind to solutions and encourages a proactive approach to financial challenges. Bad habits. Developing successful habits is crucial for success. A common bad habit is paying others first and oneself last, leading to financial struggles. Rich Dad's approach was to prioritize paying himself first, creating a sense of productive pressure to seek additional income and meet financial obligations. This habit-building process made him stronger financially. In summary, overcoming fear, cynicism, laziness, and bad habits requires adopting a mindset focused on calculated risk-taking, staying open to opportunities, viewing desire as a motivator, and developing successful financial habits. Thanks for watching.